Hello, my name is Tom, and I'm doing some work in the book of Daniel. I think Daniel can be very, very important for this particular time frame we're living in because of two reasons. First, Daniel's time frame has to do with the judgment of God being poured out on the land of Israel. What does that have to do with us? Well, Israel clung very, very tightly to several different sins. And the book of Daniel can serve as a warning to any nation, including ours, that wishes to cling tightly to those same sins. The book of Daniel, first off, is a book of warning. Second, and this is the most obvious, Daniel contains instructions about the end times. I can remember as a young Christian trying to figure out end times looking at the book of Revelation. And it just proved to be information overload. There was too much there. I lacked context and I couldn't figure it all out. But as an older guy, as I started looking at the book of Daniel, I found that Daniel can make the book of Revelation much more user-friendly. And it has to do with learning end times the same way that Daniel learned end times. He will get a handle on the study of end times over a period of 50, 60 years, 70 years. And in the book of Daniel, things come progressively. Starts off very, very simple in Daniel chapter 2, a vision about the end times from Nebuchadnezzar's perspective. Daniel waits 50 years. He receives a little bit more on the same topic. He receives a vision of end times from the perspective of the Gentiles. A little bit more, Daniel chapter 8, he receives a vision of end times from his own perspective. And a little bit further yet, in Daniel chapter 11, close to the very end of Daniel's life, he receives a vision of end times from the perspective of all the Jews. So it goes from one Gentile to all the Gentiles, one Jew to all the Jews. Interesting how God did that. But the book of Daniel gives information about the book of Revelation a little bit at a time, and you learn progressively. And when you learn progressively the same way Daniel did, at least for me, it makes the book of Revelation quite a bit more user-friendly. Now, in the future, we are going to be confronted with several counterfeits. You know the basics of Christianity, right? God is a Trinity, and Jesus Christ rose from the dead. He takes to himself a bride, and that's us. You know, the very basics. Well, we're going to be confronted with a counterfeit of some of those same things as we approach the time of the end. Just like the Father and the Spirit work together to put the Son front and center, in a similar way, the dragon, Satan, and the false prophet will work together to put the Antichrist front and center. That's right. We're going to get confronted with a false trinity. Another thing, and this is interesting, we're going to be confronted with a false mark. You've heard that from the book of Revelation. He provides that no one should be able to buy or sell unless he has a mark. That is a mark on the right hand or on the forehead. Well, that's a counterfeit from Deuteronomy chapter 6, where God wanted his word to be in the lives of his kids to such an extent that it controlled the thoughts of the mind and the activities of the hand. Go figure. This came from Deuteronomy chapter 6 and is going to be counterfeited at the midpoint of the tribulation period. Just like Jesus authenticated who he was with a resurrection, we're going to be confronted with a false resurrection. Remember the beast who had the wound of the sword and has come to life? Go figure. And just like Jesus took to himself a bride, and that's people like you and I who have said yes to him, The Antichrist will also take to himself a bride. This is Babylon, the corrupt end-time church that has fallen away from our God. That's going to be the bride of the Antichrist. And they'll do really well together for a short time. But his bride will turn on him, and it won't go well for the bride. So anyway, we're going to be confronted with counterfeits. And the Antichrist, the opposite Christ, if you would, the Antichrist is going to attempt to do this. He will speak blasphemous words against our God, and he will magnify himself above every God. And the Antichrist is going to pull an inversion, and he will call our God evil, and he himself will claim to be God. He'll claim to be good as he sits in the temple of God, displaying himself as being God. So, some of this stuff could be pretty good for us to learn because we might be approaching that same time. So what I would propose is that you try to learn end times, at least examine it from Daniel's perspective, rather than becoming overwhelmed with all the information that the book of Revelation contains. Just learn it a little bit at a time, like Daniel did. I'd be very happy if you want to study along with me. Anyway, I'll talk to you real soon, okay?